Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We'll sing a Rupa Songaray on page 54.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our topic today is holy company. A very important topic for all sincere spiritual seekers. Whether or not we have thought about this topic consciously, many of us will discover that our own personal spiritual life began in a very serious way, often as a result of company of some holy personage, a person or a group of persons we may have met in our lives. And our own lives have been enriched by being in the company of such people. So when we think or reflect on holy company, many of us have the opportunity to do so from our own personal life's experience. By this time, many of you are already become familiar with the term Satsang. Our Sunday services, we call them Satsang. Years ago, when we first began calling them a Satsang, many were not familiar with the term. And clearly, it just, at first glance, if you have never heard the word before, it does seem like a combination of two English words, sat and sang. And in some ways, that is what we do, because we can, when you look back, you say, well, we did sit together, we sat together, and we sang together, which we definitely do every Sunday. But the word is not there as really, it is also a combination of two terms, but in Sanskrit, it's pronounced as Satsang. And the word Sat means holy, auspicious, true, real. All of these meanings are included in the term Sat. And Sangha means company. And so put together, a Satsang means a holy company. The company of the holy, the auspicious, the good. And as we can see, that is what we try to do here. We meet once a week on Sundays, and we try to get company of the holy in various ways, because the company of the holy can come at very different levels, at least three levels, for instance. First, holiness can be sensed most visibly among people around us. We can learn about holiness from books, and we can seek holiness in the divine. Hence, holy company is possible through the company of holy men and women, through the company of holy books, and of course, through the company of God. Now, in ancient times, oftentimes when we begin thinking about some of these core subjects, it's helpful to see how things were in ancient times. And in the Vedic period, holy company was so significant a practice that it had become integrated into in one's own life itself. It ran as a common thread throughout one's life. In old and ancient India, there were really no schools or colleges as we understand them today to go to. Whenever a child became around 9 or 10 years old, the child was sent to a teacher's home to study. So it was called Guru Griha Vasa. So, and for the next few years, the child became almost like a part of the teacher's family. Did all the work. There were no fees to be paid in the sense we understand it today, but the student almost became a part of the teacher's family. The teacher looked upon the student as a son or a daughter, did all the work there, and received education. Now, the teacher, I'm speaking strictly in a spiritual context, was a holy person. So the company of the holy was received right from the time one was a student. Then one entered the second stage of life, one started a family, one was expected to serve and be a part of a spiritual community. So again, company of the holy became an integral part even in the second stage of life. In the third stage, when the children grew up and the parents then entered the third stage, it is often called vanaprastha, going to the forest, which literally meant in those days the hermitages that these sages had. And that was a kind of a retirement community of the ancient times. Again, so once again, in the third stage of life, one received the company of these wise sages in the forest. In the fourth stage, which is the hermit stage or the monastic stage, every person, as a result of having sought and benefited from holy company throughout one's life, was expected to have acquired enough capacity to live in the company of the divine alone. And that's how holy company was a running thread, a continuing thread in ancient times. So how do we then try to learn about holy company and acquire holy company today in the 21st century? And we'll take a quick look at the three kinds of holy company that I referred to. Company of holy people, company of holy books, and the company of God. Now, when I say company of holy people, I don't restrict that phrase only to those who have become very enlightened. Surely, of course, if we are fortunate to come in contact with people who are spiritually enlightened or far advanced in spiritual life, that's great. We are very fortunate. But even the company of people who have a spiritual ideal, they may not be too far advanced than ourselves, but that we share a spiritual ideal with them. So the company of fellow devotees, the company of fellow spiritual seekers is also very beneficial. What are the benefits of holy company and why we should have it? For one thing, all of these great texts, certainly in the Vedanta tradition, stress again and again the great benefit of holy company. In the Bhagavata, for instance, it is said, holy company destroys all worldly attachments from the mind. And the example that is often given from Krishna's life is those milkmaids and the shepherds in Vrindavan. It was through the company of Krishna, who was purity personified, holiness personified, that their minds were lifted. It was not as if all those people who came to Krishna in the early days were all great saints. No, they were attracted. Krishna was a very charismatic personality. But just coming in contact with such a holy person, their minds were lifted to that level. Swami Vivekananda, as many of you are aware, gave a 7-week retreat at Thousand Island Park in upstate New York, where we still have retreats every summer. And the record of the retreat he gave once in, I think, 1895, is there in a tiny little book called Inspired Talks. If you haven't read it, I would strongly recommend you read that book. Swami Vivekananda said that at one time, I was at my best during that retreat. So many of these are like aphorisms, but very profound teachings which provide so much food for thought. and people have reflected over these teachings for now decades. So one of the students who was present when that retreat was given was a young woman from Detroit, Michigan. Her name was Christina Greenstidel. And later she went to India, became known as Sister Christine. And so once she was visiting, this is much after Swami Vivekananda's passing, and she was visiting Madras, sometime I believe in the early 20s. And I heard this from a very elderly monk who was then a student in Madras. And so when Sister Christine visited this, we run an orphanage in Madras called the Ramakrishna Mission Students' Home. And so she visited there to meet the students. And one of the students, who later became a Swami of the order, said that in the conversation, he made the mistake of, well, not the mistake, but, well, he had the audacity to ask Sister Christine. He said, the Swamiji's teachings in the Inspired Talks, there's so much depth of meaning that many of us today, we need so much of reflection, so much guidance to understand the full import of what Swamiji said. And when all of you attended that retreat, you didn't have any background about Indian philosophy. So how were you able to follow this very abstract teaching that Swamiji gave? And then she just looked at him and said, "You fool." That's how she began. So she said, "You fool." She said, when Swamiji spoke to us, he first lifted our minds at that high level. And after lifting our minds, when he taught, it was easy to grasp it. Now that's what Holy Company can do. So we, at our own regular level, we may not have the fitness, but the company of such powerfully holy people of the level Swami Vivekananda was, he could literally lift the minds of everyone and then give this highest teaching. In fact, at one place, when he was in America, he was giving one talk, I forget in which place, and in a lecture, suddenly in the middle of a lecture, he just stopped abruptly. It wasn't a very smooth ending. He just stopped abruptly and said, "Okay, there it ends." And everyone was a little bit puzzled, because normally when you can end a lecture, there's kind of a conclusion and you know it's coming to an end, and he just stopped in the middle. And afterwards, when someone asked Swamiji, "What happened? Why did you stop?" And then Swamiji told that student, he said that when he was speaking, he saw such an upsurge of power within him. He saw that the minds of everyone sitting in front of him had become as soft as clay. And he said, "I found that I could shape them in whichever way I wanted." But he said, "I don't want to interfere. I don't want to intervene too much in the lives. I want everyone to grow through their own struggles, according to their own law of growth." So he said, "I stopped." So these are just a few glimpses we get in the lives of these great ones to see how much power they had. And so if we are fortunate to be in the company of such great ones, even a little bit of that sanctity, that purity, that power, that devotion will rub on us, and our lives will be truly blessed. And so that is what the testimony of these great scriptures and saints show us, the benefit of it. The second benefit is the need we have to re-authenticate ancient texts. Because it's not always helpful that no matter what spiritual subject comes, you immediately run to the Upanishads and the Gita, or the Gita says it this way, the Upanishad. Sure, they say it, but they're still several centuries old. And if we always hearken back to the ancient texts, at some point we might wonder whether it's all of it is just in books. All of it then suddenly appears very theoretical. All of it appears too much textual. But then when we find someone amidst us or someone closer to us in time, even if we have not met that person personally, then and see that what these texts say, what these texts have said several centuries ago is actually true, because this is what has been experienced by someone known to us or someone who is closer to us in time, then our faith in the validity of the scriptures gets strengthened. And so, it is sometimes called Shastri Kurvanti Shastrani, that the scriptures which are authentic, but they need to be re-authenticated in every generation by spiritual seekers. So only when we see that following the teachings of these books, people have lived their lives, and as a result of living their lives, disciplining themselves according to those teachings, they have actually experienced tangible results, then we know this works. It's a little bit like if someone gives you a new machine and says, this is a great machine, you can go at 200 miles per hour. Why don't you try it out? And you have never used that machine before. I think any safe person would say, am I the first one using it, or someone else has done so before me? And so being a test driver or a test pilot, there is some amount of risk involved, because you are the first one doing it. You don't know what the outcome is. And so the good news for us is that when we follow the teachings of the Gita, the Upanishads, we are not test pilots. These books have been not only sources of inspiration, but people have followed these teachings and their lives have become not just enriched, but they have become illumined. So one thing we know is it works. And because we know it works, it becomes a kind of a re-authentication of the scripture, and it strengthens our faith in it. That's what Holy Company can do. Secondly, of course, we know that we each carry some kind of, I don't want to sound too esoteric, because sometimes people use the word vibration, aura. It just kind of sounds a little, yeah, I don't too much like those terms. But we do know that every one of us kind of carries some atmosphere around us. And how do we know this? Sometimes we've seen that there are certain people who are very peaceful, calm, cheerful. And then if you just are in their company, even for a little while, that peace and that calm, that joy kind of rubs off on you. You kind of, your mind, if you are disturbed a little bit, you go in the company of some peaceful person and you find your mind calms down. And there are also other people who are always like angry or upset or frustrated. And then you may be calm yourself, but if their frustrated tendency is stronger than your calming tendency, being in their company, you might get disturbed as well. And so those whose company we seek should be such that they carry this kind of an atmosphere of peace and joy and contentment around them. And we find that we get the benefit of that. And that's why, in general, we should be more eager to seek holy company than to give holy company. By that I mean, unless we know how strong is, we might have attained some measure of calmness in our lives, which is great. But we don't know how strong our calm atmosphere is. And we say, now I've attained some peace, let me go and give peace to other people. In itself, a noble intention. But if my own peace is so fragile that I go in company to bring peace to some disturbed person, that person's disturbance might be more strong than my peace. So rather than my bringing peace to the person, that person will bring a little bit disturbance to me. And so it's good to, in general, as I said, try to seek holy company, and giving of holy company will come naturally. You don't have to go out of your way to give your company to other people. Yet another difficulty that some of us have is the problem of isolation. And that is something that frightens off people a little bit from spiritual life, because in a kind of a general sense, most people we meet in life are good, and so that's great. But if you aspire to be too good, if you want to be talking of God, if you want to talk about some these great things, kind of things we talk about here in Vedanta, not all of your friends might be tuned to it. They may not enjoy it so much. And if you kind of keep on pushing these ideas too hard, you might lose your friends. And so you really have a choice. And sometimes then people then try to say, okay, let me try to keep my spirituality hidden. Let me not try to, because I scare away my friends. I will lose my friends. And that's a real problem. So one way to, and so one might feel some amount of isolation. And many of us may have seen people is like, yeah, I have so much interest, but there is no one to talk to. There is no one with whom I can discuss this. Or there is no one who can appreciate it. At such time, a spiritual community is greatly helpful. That's why when, even periodically, if we meet with a group of people who share our ideals, with whom we can speak freely and discuss these ideas, share our concerns or share our doubts, that helps. And so Holy Company has this benefit of trying to eliminate our the problem of isolation. Then there are doubts, of course. Whenever we are practicing spiritual life, doubts will come, questions will come, and through being a part of a spiritual community helps us share sometimes the kind of doubts I have. Maybe the person, as a result of Holy Company, those doubts will get resolved, those questions will get answered. And yet another benefit is, of course, correcting of our faults. We all have our weaknesses, we all have our drawbacks. But if we are in a company of friends, a sympathetic, understanding community, then we can help each other by correcting each other's mistakes. Not with the triumphalistic thing, you gotcha kind of thing. You are the one who make a mistake, not that. But recognizing that if you find something can be done in a better way, you can point it out. And be willing to be corrected yourself as well. So Holy Company helps us get over some of our mistakes and correct ourselves. It also instills in us humility. It increases our devotion. Sometimes I think the most underrated activity in human life is thinking. There is sometimes so much emphasis laid on doing that we don't pay as much attention to thinking, partly because thinking is such a personal activity. No one has any idea what's going on inside our heads. But doing is what everyone sees. And then mostly people judge us by what we do, not so much by what we think. And so we don't pay as much attention to the thoughts in our head, so long as what we do is good, or so long as what we do is acceptable, or so long as what we do commands recognition or praise, because no one really knows what's going on inside. But really speaking, in a truly integrated life, our thoughts, our words, and our actions have to be in perfect sync. If our thinking life goes in one direction, and if you are only focused on the doing part, at some point, sooner rather than later, there's going to be stress and tension and anxiety. In fact, a lot of the self-alienation that people experience is because what we think has nothing to do with what we say, and what we say has nothing to do with what we do. And what we say and do at one time in the morning has nothing to do with what we say and do in the evening. So our lives have gotten fractured. And one of the important qualities in spiritual life is to bring our thinking, speaking, and doing all in perfect harmony. And Holy Company will help us do that as well. Holy Company also helps us deepen our spiritual aspiration. Sure, as devotees, we seek spiritual progress, but the intensity with which we seek it may be different. In some, the intensity may be great, in some, the intensity may be very mild. Now, Holy Company has the advantage, has the benefit of trying to increase our spiritual aspiration. Sri Ramakrishna said, and this you find in the Gospel, page 96, Holy Company begets yearning for God. It begets love for God. Nothing whatsoever is achieved in spiritual life without yearning. By constantly living in the company of holy people, the soul becomes restless for God. This yearning is like the state of mind of a person who has someone ill in the family. His mind is in a state of perpetual restlessness, thinking how the sick person may be cured. And we see that in Ramakrishna's own life, that in the early stage, as a seeker of the divine, his mind was restless. Well, our mind is restless too. So what is the difference between the restlessness in Ramakrishna's mind and the restlessness in our mind? His mind was restless for the vision of the divine, for the vision of the Divine Mother. He could think of nothing else. A day would pass, and as the sun is about to set, Ramakrishna would cry and say, one more day has passed, and I have not had your vision, Divine Mother. We can just figure out what we say when one more day has passed and what kind of regrets we have. So his regret was very different. Now that yearning that he had, that is the yearning he is referring to. That intensity can come in our own lives as well. And in Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, that intensity is the main thing. If we have that yearning, we may not need anything else. All that we do, all our prayer, worship, meditation, study, selfless service, all of these things ultimately are meant to increase our hunger for God. And when you are hungry, when you are it's like this. When you're not hungry, not so hungry, even if delicious food is kept in front of you, you will say, oh, I'll have it later. But when you are hungry, just desperately hungry, then even if someone says, oh, there's some food, but it's about a mile away, you will go there somehow or the other. You won't postpone it because your survival depends on it. That's the case. We can become enlightened right now, right this moment. The reason we don't become enlightened is we are not hungry yet. If we are hungry, we will find one way or the other to get it. And to increase that hunger, that is what Holy Company can do. Now, it's possible that not all of us may have the opportunity to have a kind of Holy Company we are speaking about. There may not be opportunities everywhere to have a strong, stable spiritual community of which we can be a part. Now, what is a person to do when you have this spiritual hunger, but there's no one around with whom you can speak, with whom you can share? There is no community around. It is at such time that books become our great companions. In fact, for many of us, books have been our primary introducers, if you like, to the spiritual life. Oftentimes, we might be able to even remember how some book you read somewhere kind of triggered your interest, and then you felt like reading more and reading more. So books can become our great companions. And those who truly enjoy reading will never feel lonely in their life. Because, and well, nowadays you don't even need books. If you have access to the internet and you have a good tablet, you can have the entire library in your hands. So if you have interest in reading, technology has now made it possible for us to have really more than enough reading than you can finish in a lifetime. So reading is a great help in overcoming that state of loneliness, provided of course you enjoy reading. If you don't enjoy it, then you might have all the books, but that won't help. So books do solve the problem of isolation. They do help in clearing many of our doubts. Having said that, it's also good to recognize that the benefit we get from being in the company of a really spiritual person is quicker than simply books. So spirituality can't be learned from books, but it's possible to books can act as a fairly good stand-ins for company. Now, there need to be some precautions we need to take when we try to seek holy company through books. And one is the selection of books itself. While the easy accessibility of books is a great blessing, it can also be a curse. Because things are easily available, we may not practice enough discernment, enough care about what should we read and what we should not read. Clearly, we don't have time to read all the books that are there. And all the books that are not worth reading also. Sometimes you go to a library, if you go to a library in the stacks where all the books are kept, it can either depress you or it can relieve you. The depression would be, oh, there is so much to read and how little I have read. And if you look at it in a positive way, well, I haven't read all these volumes, but I'm still quite okay. So it just depends on how you look. The idea is this: it's not the number of books that we read that really makes the difference, but how wisely we choose what we read. And so since the time we have is limited, since the energy resources we have are limited, if we choose our books judiciously, then they truly can provide a great, they can be our great companions. But if we don't choose them judiciously, we might have a lot of ideas from a lot of books. But it's not enough to have just too many ideas. Vivekananda once famously said, education is not just having a lot of ideas running riot in the head. That creates more harm than any benefit. Even if we have few ideas, but we know exactly how those ideas form a beautiful picture in our mental landscape, that is more helpful than having too many ideas, all unconnected, all firing off at wrong time, and then it's just a mess. And so that's important precaution, to choose the kind of books that we need to read. Secondly, too much reading can lead to a dry intellectualism if we are not careful. Because talking about Vedanta, discussing Vedanta, is different from living Vedanta. And so just because you read a lot, just because you remember a lot, just because you are able to discuss it with your friends, doesn't necessarily mean that they have become a part of your life. They have become a part of your intellectual life. They have become part of your cerebral life. But in order for these teachings to descend into our heart, we must start living them. And therefore, we must guard ourselves against this just dry intellectualism. So scholarship is not necessarily spiritual enlightenment. And so that's one thing that we need to keep in mind. So the distinction between practice and study, so long as our study and practice go together, we are on safe ground. The company that we get through books and the company that we derive from other spiritual companions ultimately should help us find company in the divine. In the beginning, it might not be so easy to seek company in God or divine, because Compared to books which are very tangible, very visible, compared to the holy people we met in life, again, very visible, very tangible, God or the divine being is still, for many, still an idea, a good idea, but still it's a mental construct. It's a mental. It's more an imagination. We have faith in God, we believe in God, but God hasn't become as real as a book or someone who is an inspiration in our lives. But the holy company that we get from books and from our spiritual teacher, from our saints and sages we have met in our life, should, in course of time, purify us enough, make us strong enough, make our minds and body refined enough so that we are able to find company in God. How it shows itself is through the deepening of our practice of prayer, worship, and meditation. In the beginning, when we pray, when we do worship, when we do meditation, it may not be, well, it may be far from perfect. It doesn't matter, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not like the highest form of prayer or highest form of worship or highest form of meditation, we still need to keep on doing them. Following our teacher's instructions, do it day after day after day. Whether you are in a mood or not, whether you are tired or not, because whether we are in mood or not, we breathe, don't we? We don't say, today I'm just too tired, breathing is too much work. We don't do that. Why is it that we don't stop breathing? Because we know, well, my survival depends on it. And yet, sometimes we feel, I'm just too exhausted, I'll skip my meditation today. Because we don't feel my survival depends on my meditation. But when we become sensitive enough, we recognize that losing contact with the divine, even for a day, kind of sets us back. Sometimes it is said, if you take one step towards God, God takes 10 steps towards you, which is kind of nice. Except that the corollary is often not mentioned. What if I take one step away from God? How many steps does God go away from me? And so therefore, it's very helpful. Short of a nuclear warfare, we should not miss our meditation, I think. That's the only exception I'm willing to make. Because again, what does it take? In order to go to a gym or do this thing, you need to go to a gym or you go to swimming. It needs some effort. But just to remember God, you can do it wherever you are. It doesn't even have to have too much external paraphernalia about it. But just to pray silently in the depths of our heart, to worship, even if it's a mental worship, to meditate. So if we don't do it, there's really no justification for it other than just our laziness. And therefore, it's very helpful. In the beginning, even if we are not able to do it perfectly, just stick to your routine. And alongside this company of holy books, the company of holy people, will begin to show in the improvement in the quality of our daily prayer, the quality of our daily worship, the quality of our daily meditation. And when that quality improves, when our prayer becomes really deep, when our worship becomes deep, when our meditation becomes deep, we will begin to enjoy the company of the divine. And once we get even a little bit of the taste of the divine company, all other company you have had in life will appear like a very pale shadow. Because the source of all happiness, the source of all joy is God. And once you kind of even just touch that source, even briefly for a passing moment, the heart gets filled with such joy that all other joy that we may have experienced in our life will appear very pale compared to it. And that's the goal. And that's where Holy Company can take us to. So just to conclude, it's very helpful that to seek divinity, to seek holiness, to seek that Sat, at different levels. At the physical level, we can seek it in the company of spiritual seekers. At the subtle level of ideas, we can seek the company through some judicious choice of good books, spiritual books. And at the spiritual level, we get the company of the divine, of God. What is important is that there should be the involvement and orientation of the whole personality towards the divine, not just a part of us. So right now, the religious life or spiritual life is a part-time vocation for many of us, because clearly there are a lot of other things to do. If we are spiritual seekers, can we gradually, at least over time, evolve from being part-time spiritual seekers to full-time spiritual seekers? In other words, so long as my spiritual life remains restricted to once a week or twice a week phenomenon, I'm still a part-time spiritual seeker. But I can be a full-time spiritual seeker by being connected with the divine all the time. Don't be afraid. That doesn't mean that you won't be able to do other things that you're doing now. The one good thing about spiritual life is you can be spiritual everywhere, all the time, and continue carrying out your duties and responsibilities as you're doing now. In fact, we will be able to carry out our duties and responsibilities in a much better way. The efficiency of the work that we do, the quality of the work that we do, the quality of our relationships in life, everything will improve if something of that spiritual identity remains with us all through. Not simply when we are ostensibly doing some spiritual activity. It's easy to feel spiritual when you are in a place of worship, or when you are doing your prayer or worship or meditation, or when you are reading a holy book. It's relatively easy to feel some amount of a sense of upliftment. So that's easy. But can I hold that upliftment even when I stop reading the book? So that's why they say true spirituality begins when the sermon ends. When you leave a place of worship and go out into the street, that's the test of how spiritual you are. It's easy to feel uplifted when you're in such a great sacred space and we are discussing such wonderful thing. It's great. But should this evaporate as long as you get down the front steps and start searching for your car and find that your car has been towed away, then you find how does your spirituality manifest when some such thing which can really make us mad happens in our life. That's the test. So that's what these Sunday gatherings that we have. Of course, we meet not just on Sundays, we meet on Wednesdays for a scripture class, we meet on Tuesdays and Saturdays for our meditation and arati. All of these programs are open to all, and many of you do participate in all of these programs. But even if it's not possible because of other commitments in life to come on weekdays, at least once a week on Sundays where we all gather, this is what we try to do. This kind of a gathering brings sincere spiritual seekers together. It provides us an opportunity to become acquainted with spiritual ideas and practices, and then we all pray and meditate together. And on special occasions, we also worship together. Now, this is of course not to suggest that a satsang is possible only if you come to a place of worship or only at the Vedanta Society. Now, some of you I know come from very far and are not able to visit the center as often as you like. But I would encourage you to find or make some satsang in your own neighborhood. Find people with who share your spiritual goals and ideals. And through books, through personal spiritual practice, through prayer, worship, japa, meditation, create a kind of a community around you. The idea is to always remain in the company of the divine, in the company of God, in the company, anything that helps us remain connected with our spiritual ideal. And whatever helps you to do that, you can pursue that always. One final test in all of these things is, and that's so great, that this was given by Swami Vivekananda. He said, and listen to this carefully, anything in life that helps to make you strong physically, mentally, morally, spiritually, go for it. It'll never hurt you. Anything in life that weakens you physically, mentally, morally, emotionally, spiritually, keep away from it. It's a simple thing. Even if we don't remember all these big rules and regulations, even if we don't remember all philosophy, this simple thing, anything that goes to make me strong at all these levels, that cannot go hurt me. Anything that makes me weak, that's the problem. If I can follow this simple thing, because strength, Vivekananda's one famous quote is there, he says, strength is what the Upanishads speak to me from every page. In fact, in the Upanishads say, Nayam Atma Balahinena Labhyaha. This Atman, the spirit, cannot be reached by the weak. And by strong, it not simply meant your biceps. It is the strength at all these levels. So we have to be strong. Spiritual life is not for weak people. And again, as I said, it's not simply physical strength that is referred to. More difficult and more challenging is the inner strength. Because all of us go through ups and downs in our lives. What is the test of this inner strength? How we are able to deal with these ups and downs. Sometimes a person may be very physically strong, but may be completely weak in dealing with the upheavals in life that all have to go through. And so if we can keep our balance, if we can remain calm, no matter how difficult the challenge, that's where our faith, our integrity, our inner strength manifests. Because sooner or later, everything is going to be fine. That's what a devotee has faith in. It is said that this was one thing Vivekananda often quoted. Nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. The doer of good never comes to grief. So long as we consciously try to live with good thoughts, try to speak good things without hurting anyone, try to do good work, we will never come to grief. That doesn't mean that you will never, that all the time you will be just jumping around smiling. Challenges will come. What does mean is that you will also have the strength to tide over these difficulties. And ultimately, as it is said, Satyameva Jayate, the ultimate victory will be for one who lives in the company of the holy, this greatest treasure that we all have. Om Janani Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. On Tuesday, we will have the Arati and meditation as usual. On Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of the Gita. Presently, we are studying chapter 10. Speaking of chapter 10, the chapter 9, which we concluded 2 weeks ago. Those of you who were not able to attend all the talks, the CD of chapter 9 has just arrived. It's available in the bookstore if you want to pick it up. So Tuesday, Arati, Wednesday, Gita, and on Saturday, we'll have the celebration of Guru Purnima. The Guru Purnima, according to the lunar calendar, falls on Friday, but so that it would be easier for everyone to come in large numbers, we'll observe it on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock as usual. There'll be music, there'll be a short worship, a reflection, prayer, and then potluck. So please bring all your summer specials along with you to share with this great spiritual community of which all of us are a part. And after the Guru Purnima function this Saturday, we will have our summer recess. So the last celebration before we close for the summer will be this Saturday on the Guru Purnima. And then we reopen on 13th of September with the Krishna festival. So you have 5 weeks to practice Holy Company without coming to the Vedanta Society. So that's the program for the coming week. So let's now conclude with a prayer on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.